I believe that Doom can save Halo. Well, let me explain. What do I mean by save Halo? How could Doom be the game to bring Halo forward? I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I think that Halo as a franchise needs to not just sort of step forward. I believe they need to leap forward. And in doing so, I think a great example of how to do this is how Doom did it with Doom 2016 as well as Doom Eternal, with one of the few long-standing franchises that I think has been able to pull this off. They were able to evolve to a higher plane of quality without leaving the soul of the game behind. 4 years later, Doom Eternal, after Doom 2016, I think added even more to the process. Now, I don't want to get bogged down into a discussion about Halo Infinite and is it a good game or is it a bad game. I don't think that's helpful. I think it's evident that Halo has not sort of transcended into modern gaming very well. What I do want to do is walk through from sort of a big picture perspective what went wrong with Halo in recent years. That's going to be sort of the first section of the video. What went wrong? And then after that, I want to look and say, listen, what did Doom get right? Like, what did they get right with their game as they brought it forward and as they fundamentally changed the game, but I think in all good ways. And then lastly, I want to say, taking inspiration from Doom, what could Halo do? All right. So first, what went wrong with Halo? Now, rather than do an autopsy on Halo 5 or Halo Infinite, I want to address three big areas that I feel the game has fundamentally failed. And I may give specific examples, but what I'm not trying to do is do like a super critical video of like, here's how bad Halo is, right? This is meant to be sort of a video about what the way forward could be for Halo as a franchise. So first, I want to talk about how I feel they stayed too true. And what I mean is they stayed too true to what Halo was in the past. Second, I want to talk about the evolution of the game was far too safe. Evolution is meant to be painful. It is meant to do risky things, right? It's meant to require some level of adaptation, and I think this is another aspect of evolution. There was just no adaptation. We'll talk about that in a moment. Third, I feel like they simply added to the game. They didn't grow the game. I think there's a difference between doing evolutionary steps of the game and purely doing additive steps and changes. Honestly, what little they did add didn't really feel all that innovative. So first, what do I mean by they stayed too true? Well, to put it quite simply, Halo is a dated game. The first Halo came out in 2001. That was 22 years ago. And the speed and the movement and the feel of Halo, it still just feels too tied to the Halo games of old. If you compare Halo 1 PvP footage to Halo Infinite PvP footage, it's really, really hard to spot like significant differences. Now, I'm not saying there aren't differences, right? Obviously, player movement speed and intensity of combat are increased, but at its core, it's not really that different. Like, if you're actually going to do side-by-side comparisons of Halo Combat Evolved and Halo Infinite, the speed of movement that you can use with mouse and keyboard, obviously if you play Halo on a PC back in the day, and just the rate at which you can cover ground, it has been increased. It really has. But, you know, the ability to do new things or different things just really isn't there. Now, many are going to push back and they're going to say, well, that's actually a good quality. That's actually something that is very good about Halo. Okay, I disagree. I think Doom is a great example of, and we'll get to that in a moment. I don't want to get too deep into Doom just yet. I'm going to showcase what I feel Doom successfully did that Halo has not. So first, that's just the first point I want to make, is it's too tied to the past. Halo Infinite doesn't feel that different from the old Halo games, and I think that's really making it difficult for the game to garner any new audience members. Secondly, I think that the evolution was too safe. It wasn't painful enough. Having to adjust to slightly faster player movement is like adjusting to 75 miles an hour after doing 65 miles an hour, right? It's not that different. It doesn't require a lot from you when suddenly your vehicle increases by 5 or 10 miles an hour. From a PvP PvP perspective, I think this is actually problematic for a whole host of reasons. I mean, ground level, your veteran players are practically godlike from the very first day the game hits the market because your evolution is too safe. You've done such minor adjustments that has required such minor adaptation from your veteran players. Beyond PvP, I would say even the grappling hook is a very, very tame and minor adjustment or addition to the game. The game impact of a grappling hook is just not something that I would count as an evolutionary step for the game. Minor changes to classic weapons or to enemies, it just all feels incredibly safe. And again, people might push back and say, well, that's what makes Halo Halo. And I would argue that enough time has passed, okay? It's time to take a major leap forward. And again, I believe Doom will be helpful in displaying this. Now, the last area that I feel went wrong with Halo is that they simply added. They didn't really grow the game. This makes the game feel somewhat static, almost like Halo just continues beneath the surface and you've added some trinkets and some toys along the way. Like an RPG that gets a few extra levels tacked on and a few new pieces of gear to try, it doesn't really feel like a new game or a new era. It's just more Halo. So, those are the three things I feel they kind of messed up. They stayed way too true, the evolution was way too safe, and I really feel like they did more adding to the game as opposed to growing the game. So, let's talk about Doom, okay? What did Doom do right? What did they get right that we could learn from and apply to Halo? Now, again, in a similar way, I don't want to get deep into the specifics. I want to talk about three ways that Doom got the evolution of the franchise right, okay? First, it was tethered and not tied to the past games. This distinction will be huge in contrasting how Doom and Halo have stepped into modern gaming. The modern gaming landscape has been stepped into quite differently by these titles, and I believe that Doom is tethered to the past and not tied to it. I'll explain why I'm saying that in a moment. Second, it retained its identity. Okay, this is actually huge. This is often something people worry about, or they'll criticize a game. They'll say, it's just not such and such game anymore, right? It just isn't the same, or this isn't my Final Fantasy, right? Now, the third thing they did is they evolved what mattered. There are certain facets of gameplay that simply must evolve with time. If not, they will automatically feel dated, and I don't think Halo did any of these things, okay? So first, what do I mean by it's tethered and not tied to the past? Well, I want you to picture the difference between when you do a three-legged race with someone and your ankles are tied together, and when a dog is on a leash in your yard. It sort of tethers him to an area, but he still has a lot of freedom to move around. When you're tied to somebody, you can't really move very far or do much different than the person that you're tied to. And that's what Halo Infinite is. It's a hamstrung game. It largely mimics too much of the old games, and it can't really stand on its own. What distinctive things can you say about Halo Infinite that aren't really going to see it tied significantly to the past? Doom is clearly tethered to the old games. Like, that's undeniable. You can sense it in the movement, the enemies, even the visceral nature of the game. There's clearly something that has it tethered, but it's not tied to the old games. It's not tied to the past. It leapt forward. It was allowed to reinterpret. It was allowed to keep those things in place without completely abandoning them, right? Not being tied to the old games really granted it the room it needed to roam around and to try new things. And Halo feels constrained by the past. It doesn't feel like it's honoring it. It feels like it's sort of stuck. Second, Doom retained its identity. Now, this is obviously extremely hard given how much the game has changed to do. Retaining identity is more than just making a game look the same. It has to still feel the same. It should feel the way that Doom should feel. But the clearly thing I think they did is they almost remastered what Doom 1 or Doom 2 would feel like, and they elevated it, everything you could do. They elevated all of the things at your disposal. This is where I believe Halo has just too much baggage. If you go back to Halo 1 and you go back to Halo 2, imagine what a remastered, crazy, next-gen version of those games would be like, right? What should Master Chief be able to do now? Remember, you gotta keep him tethered, but not tied. And the trick here is, I feel like with Doom, they primarily went back to the first two games, seemingly ignoring a lot of what happened in between. Doom 64, Doom 3... There's clearly some carryover with some of the models and the enemy design, but those feel largely ignored. It feels very much tethered to Doom 1 and 2. Like, hey, what would those games look like today with all that we can do? Again, you're not tethered. I'm sorry, you're not tied. You're tethered, and you have to retain that identity. And that has a relationship to the third thing that I want to say. They evolved what mattered, okay? And this relates to evolution needing to be painful. You have to be willing to just get rid of things, okay? Slow movements, familiar weapons, clunky weapons, weapons that don't feel all that strong. You gotta toss them or change them. Imagine Doom 2016 or Doom Eternal with marginally different weapons than Doom 2. That's what a lot of the weapons in Doom 3 felt like, if I'm honest. But Doom 2016 took each weapon and stretched it beyond its former self. There's a clear inspiration, but not total separation. Halo weapons don't feel inspired by the past. They feel like they are from the past. And that's what I want to talk about next. What could Halo do? In light of what Doom has done, what could Halo do? Because basically, I think there are four major areas that could be evolved in Halo, okay? Ironically enough, the first Halo was Halo Combat Evolved, and that's exactly what needs to happen. The combat needs to evolve. I want to talk about four areas specifically: the weapons, the movement, the enemies, and yes, Master Chief. So first, the weapons. This is an area where Halo actually has a lot in its corner, okay? If anything, I think the Mangler in Halo Infinite proves that as soon as they make something new and better, it becomes the best and the most preferred. And that's a problem when the weapon pool is so easily lopsided. But what is in Halo's corner is how iconic and faithful the weapons have been. That gives you a great canvas to work with. And that's the picture I want to use. Each weapon, as it exists, should just merely be a canvas, a starting point. Just how crazy can you make the AR? That classic AR with the blue ammo readout and its angular, sort of triangle-like shape. Again, look at what Doom did. It honored the past, but it gave us something new, powerful, and fun. Like, even some of the more bombastic weapons like the Ravager or the Cinder Shot or the Skewer, they all just feel too safe. And this is where the next big step in evolution is needed. Because if you're going to change the weapons, if you're going to make the weapons kind of crazy, you're going to have to adjust movement. Doom gave us, I think, in 2016 and in Doom Eternal, they gave us just enough speed, agility, and movement volition that the entire landscape of combat opened up. It allowed you to get really creative with how you navigated the spaces that they created. This is where I have to restate that evolution is painful. Yes, you would potentially lose core audience members if suddenly movement and the weapons were dramatically evolved and ratcheted up. I'm not saying you have to make Halo into Doom. Do what Doom did. Take all those great weapons that you have and bring them forward, okay? It's yes, you're going to lose core audience members, but are those people keeping your dated Halo alive? Like, a truly new and transformative Halo would usher in a new era, and it would also usher in new players. So movement would have to evolve right along with the weapons. I need to be able to dodge or dash or make agile decisions if the weapons are crazier and if the weapons are stronger. The two would have to go hand in hand with their changes, which would ultimately be related to the third thing. And I know this might not be important to the PvP guys, but the enemies would have to evolve in Halo as well. Doom clearly loved bringing forward classic enemies. The Caco demon, the sort of floating, spiky, one-eyed mouth. I don't know if I'm saying that right. The Caco demon. It's just that spiky, floating, red mouth guy with one eye. I think that's a perfect example, right? Bringing forward an enemy from the past, but really making them look nuts, okay? I think that may be one of the latent problems with Halo, okay? There was 8 years between Halo 5 and Halo Infinite. There was 22 years between Doom 2 and Doom 2016. This makes some of the shedding process a bit easier, okay? It's less noticeable because there was a huge jump in technology. There's a huge jump in graphics. And again, if we ignore Doom 3, then there's this massive leap in what the game looks and feels like. I still believe Halo could make this jump, right? How? As I said, go back to the first two games. Halo 2 released in 2004. Spend the next 5 years making a killer Halo. Evolve it the way that Doom evolved itself. That would make you drop a Halo in 2028. 2028, all the way back to 2004 when Halo 2 first came out, that's a 24-year span. Act like the middle games didn't even happen. They don't even exist. Like, in the same way that Doom largely ignored a lot of those middle things that took place. It's more linked to Doom 1 and Doom 2. That, I think, would help you bring the game forward, essentially. Lastly, Master Chief. Master Chief has to change, guys. He does. Like, Doom Guy and Master Chief certainly have some things in common. They are grunts in green, and they get the job done. But Master Chief needs to leave behind the broody man of few words in the armor. Make him a cyborg, make him a mech, or, I don't know, honor Master Chief and make him a hybrid, half-person, half-cyborg, like 100 years in the future. I don't know. Do something, okay? Doom Guy has an advantage as the cliche silent killing machine, right? They didn't have to do much with him. They just had to make his armor look cooler, okay? No matter how you shake it, Halo in its current state is just not appealing to new players, and it's barely appealing to long-standing players. It's time to let Doom save Halo, and maybe even let id Software be the team to do it, or at least help out, help make it happen. The alternative, in my estimation, would be just another Halo. If you like this video, thank you so much for watching. I'm probably out of town right now. This is a premiere that would hit while I'm gone. Enjoy the week watching these premieres in the morning. Leave a comment below. What do you think? Could Doom save Halo? I appreciate you guys so much. If you're members, I'll look to probably try to react with you and talk with you in the Discord, so make sure and get in there. As always, if you're not a member, you can click join to be involved in those ways, or hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.